So, welcome back to Tara Institute. Thanks for coming out on such a cold and miserable night. It's pretty difficult out there. It's hard enough for me just to walk across the courtyard. So, well done to all of you. My name's Damien, and I'm leading this month's Monday nights. And my topic in general is thought transformation. Mainly because it's what originally attracted me to Buddhism, and it's also, I guess, to some degree, the main focus of my own attempts at practicing Buddhism, based around this idea of thought transformation. So the first thing we should try to do tonight, though, is to generate as good a motivation as possible for the class tonight. So our actions, all of our actions, are based on some thought. There's no action that we do that is not preceded by some thought. Okay, so that may not often be visible to us, particularly visible, but if we examine our sort of being and all of the ins and outs of our actions, we can see that there is an intention prior to acting. And so in any action in our life, the quality of that intention in terms of whether it is to benefit or whether it is to harm, the quality or that attribute of the intention pervades the action. This is a very important point in Buddhist sort of behavioural psychology, let's call it. So the quality of our intention pervades the action that follows. And if we can generate an altruistic attitude, wishing to develop ourselves so that we are able to benefit others and not to harm others. And also with the thought of benefiting, developing yourself, developing a whole lot of qualities that enable you to benefit others more effectively. And also develop qualities that prevent you from harming others so readily. So these are worthwhile sort of contemplations to think about in terms of your motivation. So this topic of thought transformation, even the mere naming of that as a topic, thought transformation, and the fact that it is of importance in Buddhism already shows a significant truth. And that is that, as Shantideva says, where would I find enough leather to cover the surface of the earth? But merely putting leather on the soles of my feet, I accomplish all else. So this indicates the sort of a basic premise of Buddhism that it's not possible to change the world to a way or a method or an appearance or a circumstance that makes me happy. that eliminates my suffering. It is just physically not possible to completely eliminate all of the unpleasant things in the world, all of the unpleasant people, all of the disliked philosophies, attitudes, circumstances, religions, races, countries, property developments, whatever it is that's annoying, the lack of good programs on Netflix or whatever it is, that things that might annoy you. There is the possibility of us completely changing the world to make me happy. It is not possible. And even the mere attempt at doing that tends to create more suffering within yourself. So even the mere idea of thought transformation indicates this truth, that it is not possible to find enough leather to cover the surface of the earth, but by merely placing leather on the soles of your own feet, you will accomplish all else. So it's an important thing to consider. And so thought transformation is saying exactly that, that, problems like racism or even to the extent of ethnic cleansing and all these sorts of things that go on in the world, that instead of trying to kill millions of people, if you can transform your hatred into affection and encompassing that person, encompassing that supposed enemy, instead of this division of self and other, the extension of self to those people or to the, in that circumstance, the extension of my people to everybody completely cures the need for that hatred. So this is the essence of thought transformation is the, one of the early meditations that is encouraged is this generally called friend, enemy, stranger meditation, where you contemplate, somebody that you see as a dear friend, and then a person that you conceive of as an enemy, and then a third person that to you is like a mere stranger, And so you look at the attitudes of strong attachment and desire maybe, or certainly, but attachment and friendship, this sort of friend, this embellishment, my friend. And then the enemy, my enemy, and the my is very important. It's my enemy. And the thoughts that go with that, and then the indifference towards the stranger. So by meditating on those categories, we start to understand those categories, and we can see that it's my friend, my enemy, my stranger. So the attachment, hatred, and indifference are related to my. And to understand that process, so one of the meditations that's done early on is to see actually the equality of those three different people. That from their side, they, it's that the situation, the delineation or of the categories is from my side. The interpretation of their actions towards me, my attitudes towards them, the interpretation of what is beneficial for me, and the interpretation of what is harmful for me, and the interpretation of what is totally meaningless to me. So to really start to understand this interplay of my mind and my attitudes and the object that I hold, in this case, a friend, an enemy, and a stranger. So that hints at this whole issue of our conceptualization, of how our mind, so for instance, the mind of, let's say, the mind of desire, attachment. So we think that the attachment or the desire is generated merely from seeing a beautiful object or a beautiful person, or talking with someone and thinking this person can give me complete and ultimate happiness. We convince ourselves that it's entirely from the object, from the object side, that my happiness will be completely fulfilled by this person. My joy and happiness will be completely filled by buying this object. It completes my collection of things. It's a fulfillment of my happiness to have this object, this relationship, this person, this experience. So we think that comes merely from the object. We think that comes entirely from the object. This girl is so beautiful, so perfect, of course I am attracted to her. So the complication is that the mind of desire, or the mind of grasping attachment, the grasping attachment mind, has got some different ingredients. So there's the object. There's the object. Then there's me. And then there is the sort of the process of when I focus on that object, I have a certain experience. So the big question is, what comes first? Let's say the mind of attachment and the mind of desire, or the beautiful object? Which comes first? And what is the relationship between that strong mind of attachment and desire and wanting, lustful mind, and let's say, the beauty and the desirability of the object? So if we start to try to analyse and see which comes first, you can see it becomes very difficult to identify whether the mind of attachment or the beautiful object comes first, because they are interrelated. They are interrelated, and the beautiful object is embellished. It is embellished by my mind of desire. And my mind of desire is enhanced by my perception of the beautiful object. So these two factors become like a runaway train of desire and projection of beauty. So, and they're interrelated. A person devoid of desire will not react with desire even to the most beautiful object. But a person thoroughly enveloped in a mind of desire will create desire even on the most ordinary object. People that collect rusty tin cans, pay thousands of dollars for them, this is a 1923, Bushell's tea box or something. It's worth thousands. And they're all excited. I've got a friend that does this stuff, so this is real. People do these things. They see bits of. To everybody else, it's a piece of junk, but to them, it's something very valuable, and it's got historic importance, which is mere projection. It has rarity and uniqueness, which is also a projection. And then the mind has this aspect of grasping. And so the person's experience is that this mind is automatically generated by the individual perfectness of the object. The individual truth of the object is what, this is the presumption that generates my mind. And we can also say that if I'm totally habituated to, say, the mind of desire, then I tend to project that mind onto a whole range of objects and create an embellishment or an exaggeration from the force of my desirous mind. So this process is actually going on all of the time for all of us, every moment, with what is attractive, with what is unattractive, to what is an obstruction, to what is an opportunity. There's so many sort of different aspects of the way we are embellishing the object. So, how do we tackle this whole problem? So there's we've got these different ingredients. We've got this whole thing about I want, I need, sort of I. This sort of a self-centered attitude. That's one, probably the fundamental underlying problem. But then in addition to that, we've got the this mental construction that the object will satisfy I. We've got this presumption that by acquiring or by humiliating or by striking out or whatever the circumstances are, that by doing that, I will be satisfied. And then there's the object itself. So in the tenet system of Buddhist philosophy, the first Buddhist school of philosophy says that an object has a sort of a naked truth about it. That it is what it is. And our problem is that we either exaggerate or diminish the aspects of the object. So this is quite useful for us, that we can think that the let's say in terms of sexual desire. So in terms of sexual desire, we see the beautiful person, beautiful body. We don't see the person, we actually see the body. That's what our eyes see, is the body. And we presume there's a person inhabiting the body. But what we actually see is the body. And so we have this projection that that body will deliver complete happiness and bliss to me if I possess it. So one of the sort of antidotes to our thinking is to think of that body as a, it's in its truthful aspect. Its truthful aspect, not an exaggerated or embellished aspect. So we use our mind to try to examine the physical reality of the body that we find so attractive and appealing. And you don't have to be a surgeon to understand what that means, that we examine the reality of the body. The skin, the bones, the flesh, the organs, the skeleton, the blood, you name it. That is the reality. And so when we do that, we see that there is a reality, there's an actual reality, free of projection, free of embellishment, free of exaggeration, free of fantasy. There is a reality. But my mind has fabricated a projection which then is a suitable basis for my lust to arise. And to see how the projection or the embellishment and the mind of desire are interrelated. They're interrelated. And so our habituation to desire causes us to perceive the body free of its reality. We bypass the reality and we create a fantasy. And on the basis of that fantasy, our desirous habituation just explodes with the mind of desire and lust. So this process is actually going on all the time with all sorts of objects. And the same process occurs with hatred, with jealousy, with just wanting to deceive people, wanting to cheat or whatever it is. This process of how we perceive the object and how our habituated mind embellishes or diminishes, projects or fantasizes, whatever language you want to use, but we never see the object exactly as it is. So it's the interrelationship of our habituated desire, anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, hatred. That habituation in our mind that creates this scenario. And we are very happy to blame it on the object. We blame it on the object. But we need to examine and see this interrelationship between my mind and the way that I colour or manipulate or project, deceive, embellish, exaggerate the object. But predominantly misapprehend the object. So, the path to do something about this is, from the Buddhist point of view, it's a very multifaceted path. So we can tackle this idea of the habituations in my mind and apply an antidote, So to anger, we apply patience. To lust and desire, we apply... So one method is that we apply the apprehension of reality of the object. To jealousy, we apply rejoicing in the activities of others, rejoicing in the happiness of others, in the success of others. To pride, we generate humility. To arrogance, we apply love, compassion, equanimity. Recognizing the needs and the wants of others. So that in terms of our habituations. So we talk generally we talk about mindfulness and alertness. Mindfulness and introspection. In terms of meditation, but also we can talk about it in terms of our daily thinking. But Buddhism adds a third aspect, which is called conscientiousness. So to tackle this idea of our ingrained habituations to lust or to anger, to hatred, to pride, that we deliberately try to hold our mind in a state of love and compassion constantly. So that quality is called conscientiousness, where the application of our mind is to, with effort, to hold an attitude of love and compassion constantly. And it's that attitude of love and compassion held constantly prevents anger from arising. It prevents jealousy from arising. It prevents lust from arising. It prevents arrogance, superiority, competitiveness, and miserliness. It'll prevent all of those things if we hold a genuine attitude of love and compassion towards others. So that quality is called conscientiousness. But all of these things are dependent on having some power in my mind, some power in my purpose. So far I've talked about the mind and then the object, so we're pretty clear on that. Then there's a couple of other aspects to talk about, and the next one is our attention. So this link between the mind and the object, the exaggeration, benefit, embellishment, and fantasizing of the object, and the habituated mind that is doing that, is dependent on me maintaining the attention to that object. So one of the simple solutions that we can apply in life to our anger or our lust or our pride or whatever is to break the connection between the mind and the object. And we can do that by merely changing the object. So this is one of the sort of key aspects about meditation, is that, let's say the breathing meditation, for example, the reason that the breathing meditation has benefit for us is that whatever we are plagued with, whatever we're plagued with in terms of our disturbances in our mind, whether it's anger or self-pity or depression or miserliness or jealousy, whatever it is, to see that there's a state of mind that I have, there's an object that mind is holding, but if I can break the attention, the connection between the mind and that object, I'll be free of that particular circumstance. So breathing meditation works and can generate a sense of peace for us, because we are disrupting the connection between my mind and possibly a disturbing object or a disturbing thought, a disturbing experience. So in the meditation, we choose, let's say, the breathing as our object of focus, and we hold our mind on that object. Even if it's for 1 minute or half a minute or 5 minutes or whatever, and by the force of our effort, we spend 1 minute doing that. That's 1 minute that we are not engaged in our habitual disturbing thoughts. And that's why sometimes the first time people meditate, they feel something really lift. I felt it myself the first time I ever meditated. I felt something was different in that meditation. And I think it was the breaking of the connection between my habitual disturbing thoughts and the engaging in the associated objects of those disturbing thoughts, which for most of us is just an endless train of thoughts and objects with no respite. So meditation can give a respite. But instead of looking at it as just this momentary pleasurable experience, we should learn from it and try to apply that experience to this truth about the way that our mind is disturbed. And so we can learn from the meditation and learn that it is this process of my habituated negative mind, based on my self-cherishing, grasping at an object which is fabricated and fantasized and holding attention on that. And so I suffer due to that process. So even in the simple breathing meditation, we can try to break that connection of our mind being trapped into the object and the object being fantasized or created by my mind. This sort of two-way problem. So we'll do some meditation. Can I ask if anybody's here for the first time tonight? Is there some people first time? Good? All right. Thanks. There was a few new people last week, which was good. Okay, so adopt a comfortable position. And just become aware of where your mind is. And bring it right in yourself in this moment. Let all of the thoughts go from your mind. So the motivation here is that we will focus just on the breath for a few minutes. And all other thoughts are viewed as a distraction. And we're doing this to train our mind to overcome this problem of our mental delusions and our deluded objects producing disturbance for me and often producing harm and suffering to others. So the motive is still to benefit others. So let all of the thought go from your mind. And then turn your attention just to the breath coming in, going out, and focus on the awareness of the breath, coming in, going out. Keep your mind on the object, just the breath. Don't let any distraction come into your mind. So you can relax your concentration a little bit. And just examine what happened in your meditation. You know, it's important to be comfortable so that your body does not start aches and pains that can distract your meditation. So to some degree you can ignore, you know, your body tends to produce sort of niggles and distractions, but you know, if you're comfortable, you can just ignore those, you know, which is like, I think maybe a little bit of a fabricated distraction from your body. So ignore that and just keep your focus completely on the breath. And so for us as beginners, we are using effort. You know, we're using effort to keep our focus on the chosen object. With practice, it's possible for this process to become effortless. That merely from the intention wanting to meditate, our mind can focus completely undistractedly on a chosen object, without effort, without distraction. Okay, but for us, we have to apply effort, and so we do the best that we can, and we use our determination to hold the object, and also we use a little part of our mind to check on whether we are holding the object properly or not. So this is the introspection, checking, the looking and checking, analysing if we're still on the object. So ultimately that also is a distraction, but for us we need that little bit of an internal policeman to help us do as good a job as we can. So just once more for a couple of minutes, with a strong determination, focus on the breath coming in and going out. Okay, you relax your concentration. So we've got time now for some discussion or questions, or if anybody like to share anything, you're most welcome. So.
Damien, I came to the gig last Wednesday night, did off track I guess. They said it started at 8 o'clock, but I can't help but think I missed the first part.
Look, yeah, so the question is about the Tuesday night and Wednesday night classes here. Geshe Doga on Tuesday night definitely starts at 7:45, but that first 15 minutes is generally a lot of introductory prayers, right? I think this last week, Geshe Lobsang maybe came a little bit early, and so it would have only been a few minutes before 8 o'clock, I think, but yeah, look, they do have a habit of coming early. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Next question about the first part that about the object attachment and the nature of it. In our everyday life, it seems impossible to remind myself all the time that everything that I perceive is, as illusive nature, that everything is illusion, etc. Because I need to function somehow, right? And if we're talking about negative attachment, like when we exaggerate the qualities of the object, it's one thing. I can apply it. But when we're talking about, for example, dealing with our dearest and nearest, when I need to provide safety and care for my child, for example, it seems impossible to analyze, am I exaggerating, the quality of my child or not? Of course I am. Or he wouldn't survive. Because I think every mother should exaggerate the quality of the child, right? In order to provide, the life for him or for her.
Yeah, so the question is about, and I'll just use that last part of your question, the mother for the child, that the care and love and affection that you show the child, you're saying is based on an exaggeration of the child's qualities. Would you say that? Is that you?
I'm sure because I perceive, I have 7-year-old son,
Yeah.
and I perceive him as my son.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you put another 7-year-old boy,
Yep.
of course I have no attachment to him. No
Yeah.
negative emotions.
Okay.
But I
So,
will not die for him or for her.
Yeah.
Another 7-year-old child, but for my child, for sure.
so the assertion there, I mean, it's a good question. Let's draw it out. So, is your sense of responsibility towards the child merely dependent on the quality of the child?
I'm sure that there are many factors involved biologically as well.
Well, so I would say that in your mind you have taken the responsibility. And so no matter what the qualities of the child are, you are expressing your responsibility for the welfare of the child. Yeah, so it's not dependent on exaggerating the qualities of the child. Anyway, that's something to think about first off, that you've accepted the responsibility of caring for the child because you've said, this is my son.
Yes,
and so merely on the basis of that, you have fully accepted the responsibility to sacrifice everything for the well-being of your son, even if he's not pleasant. Right? So that's important. And that's, I know, but that is a quality. That is a quality of love and compassion. Okay. Now, in this case, the love and compassion is conditional on you accepting the responsibility because it's my son. So in from an ultimate point of view, that's not 100% perfect love and compassion because it's conditional on this sense of ownership or on being a parent. But it is still love and compassion. And one important aspect of it is that it's not conditional on the child being perfect.
Of course.
No, it's only conditional on it being your child.
Yes.
And so on the basis of that, you fully express love and compassion and care and concern and devote all of your resources, everything, to the welfare of that child. That's really good. Right. So the question is it possible to have a sense of responsibility to all living beings unconditionally? You know, that's the question. So, you know, the example of a mother and a child is quite interesting because, and you see it from time to time in the television and that, you see it where the reporters harass some mother because her son's a murderer. And through that whole fog of that pressure and all that, still the mother turns up at the court and prays for the welfare of her son or wishes for the welfare of her son, even if she accepts that he's committed a murder, for example. There is no barrier to love and compassion for somebody who is harmful or done something terrible. You know, it's a really marvellous thing, you know, that we can actually examine those circumstances and say, a mother's love for her son, there is no barrier in the child being a nasty little child. You know, that's not a barrier. It is not a barrier to love and compassion or care or total responsibility. So that is the basis. You know, we can say that basis is the same basis from a Buddhist point of view in having love and compassion for all living beings, because it is independent of the negativity of that person. And so like this bodhicitta motivation, the Buddha mind, you know, the aspiration to become enlightened in order to benefit others, is based on an understanding that you accept personal responsibility for the welfare of others, let's say independent of their faults, right? But it's actually, you accept the responsibility for others because of their faults. Because that means that there is something there to help, you know. And so your question is a really good one, because it shows this, you know, that when you accept the responsibility for somebody, that becomes, it's a condition, but it means that the love and compassion becomes unconditional. You know, that whether the boy is good or bad or troublesome or, you know, whatever, the love and compassion is present all the time. So, and from that we can understand then what the mind of bodhicitta really means, is that the love and compassion for others becomes completely, I mean, I'll say unconditional, but it's actually conditional on the faults and the suffering of all beings. You know, it's actually because of the faults and the suffering of all other living beings that the Buddhas generate this love and compassion for them. So,
Who is bodhicitta?
Bodhicitta. So there's Sanskrit words, B-O-D-H-I. You know, in English that's not Sanskrit. It's something. So bodhi means like Buddha, awakened. The word bodhi sort of means, Buddha means sort of awakened. Citta is the Sanskrit word for mind. So it means the awakened mind, a mind like the Buddha. So that's where it comes from. So the most, you know, especially in this tradition here, most of the terms get translated into English. You know, there's only a handful of terms that sort of somehow get stuck with their original Sanskrit word, like Dharma or bodhicitta or Buddha. But even bodhicitta often, like, it's normally in the teachings here with Geshe Dogen, that here it's always the altruistic, it's translated as the altruistic mind of enlightenment. So it's got this idea of, it's an altruistic mind. And it's aimed at enlightenment, but it's aimed at benefiting all others. So I think this question here is really good for us to understand, you know, the love of a mother for their child we say it's conditional on them saying it's my child, but it becomes unconditional in terms of the child itself, you know. And it's a really important consideration. So the bodhicitta mind is conditional on taking a responsibility to benefit all others, but it's unconditional in terms of you could say it's unconditional in terms of the suffering or the deluded minds or the negativities of all of the beings. But then we can say that it's actually conditional on those negative minds and the suffering and the imperfections of those people, because that is why they can be benefited. So I don't know if you followed that transition from being unconditional to being conditional to being unconditional. Because, you know, and it's depending on the way you think about it. So, you know, it's beneficial to sort of think like that, you know, to see that progression of thought. Yeah. So is everybody convinced about this, let's say the link, you know, the connection between your state of mind and your perception of the object? You know, are you convinced? You know, and it's a serious question, because we are so wrapped up in the object being true in the way that we see the object. We are certain that that is the truth of the object, and we cannot see our embellishment or exaggeration or diminution of the object. We can't see it, and we are absolutely certain about the person, the object, the circumstance, you know, whatever, everything, you know. And that's something you have to keep coming back to again and again and again, because our habituation to accepting our perception of the object as an absolute truth is full on our, you know, that is so totally our experience. And the process to try to undermine that is, you know, it's a difficult process.
I totally believe in that. I've got a really good example. I did my research and hunted for months and months and months to buy a electric couch. And I looked everywhere. I sat on every couch in Melbourne. And when I finally bought one that I thought was perfect, I found it really uncomfortable. And I think I got caught up in that desire of finding the couch. And it was a good lesson, because I could have just got any couch.
And been equally uncomfortable.
But it just, that thought process, it just goes to show that I can become, I guess, it's a distraction. If I'm so obsessed with buying a couch or a car or whatever, it distracts my thought pattern from me, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I sit on the couch, I think, what was that all about?
Yeah, I know. That's right. Exactly.
It's sort of like, I feel like maybe desire, it's, you know, it's filling your cup, so it's making you feel whole or enjoyment or happiness from something outside of yourself. Maybe because, you know, you feel like you need that, maybe you're not comfortable without it. You know, maybe it's something you feel you need to be happy, or, you know, like being dependent in relationships or something like that. You know?
Yeah, so the question is about, you know, desire of an object being something that you want, you know, that you perceive it as, well, this is exactly the problem. The I, the sense of I, the grasping, wanting happiness, which is legitimate. Let's say it's legitimate. Wanting happiness. Then the mind thinking the way I can be happy is by buying the perfect couch, for instance, as in the beautiful example here. And then the aversion to failure in that task produces months of effort and, incredible diligence in going, like as she said, to every couch in Melbourne, sitting on them, and then ending up being disappointed. So, to some degree, desire is always disappointed, because the aspect of desire, the mind of desire, wants. It wants. And so it doesn't matter what you have, the mind of desire still wants. So the mind of desire is actually never satisfied. It cannot be satisfied because it is a mind that wants. So satisfaction is impossible. And that's something to sort of check and understand as well, that it's not possible to satisfy the mind of desire. And so the mind of desire at some point has to be cut off and replaced with the mind of contentment. And so contentment is an antidote to the mind of desire. That the first couch you saw, on special, if you bought it and you developed the mind of contentment, it would never disappoint you. No. Yeah, this was Sydney's Lounge's fire sale, if any of you know the reference to that. All right, so thank you very much. We'll just do a quick dedication meditation. So just thinking about this, coming together, making the effort to come here, all of these are really valuable things. And from everybody, rejoice in other people's efforts to understand, to think, to meditate. Imagine this takes the form of a ball of white light and bring it above the crown of your head and let it completely dissolve into you. Generating a strong sense of rejoicing. And then imagine rays of light going out to every living being and bringing them benefit. And in doing that, your mind being completely free of any self-interest or contamination from any deluded thinking or emotional affliction. Free of that, just the mere thought to benefit others. And then let that light dissolve back into yourself. Rejoicing in your efforts and everybody's efforts tonight. So thank you very much, and I'll be back next week, so Monday night, so please come if you can. Thank you.